Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephanie Whalen. I'm the director of the Texas Film Commission, and I want to welcome you to the 2022 Women in Tech and Innovation Forum. We have a record number of attendees this year, and we are very excited for the programming that we've put together. On behalf of myself and the director of the Governor's Commission for Women, Christina McKinney, we would like to thank our sponsors, AT&T and Sempra, and I would also like to extend special thanks to the hardworking staff of the Texas Film Commission and the Women's Commission for all their efforts in putting this forum together. And with that, welcome. Enjoy the programming over the next 2 days, and I'm turning it over to my colleague, Lindsay Ashley.
Hello and good morning, everybody. Welcome to day one of the 2022 Women in Tech and Innovation Forum. We have 4 exciting panels for you today, and we have 3 again tomorrow. So we hope you'll tune in whenever you can. We're really excited to kick things off with some of our new friends and colleagues from Texas State University. We have a panel called Beyond Entertainment with AR, VR, and XR, Examples in Industry Crossover. We have 5 leading researchers and experts. Those include Dr. Khoi Nguyen, Dr. B.J. Spencer, Dr. Glenna Billingsley, Dr. Cathy Thomas, and Dr. Pete Blair. So we thank them very much for their time today, and we hope you enjoy the conversation.
Hello all, I'm Dr. Khoi Nguyen, and I will be the moderator here and co-panelist. I'm honored and pleased to be able to introduce my colleagues here doing some amazing work with XR technologies in the field for the betterment of society. So I would like to go around and have them introduce themselves and also their research and why XR, why is it coming into play nowadays? So Dr. Blair, I guess you would go first.
Hi, my name is Pete Blair. I'm the Executive Director of the Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training Center at Texas State University. I'm also Professor of Criminal Justice at the same. And my training group does training across the country for first responders of all different sorts to respond to active shooter events like Virginia Tech, Columbine, those sorts of events. And the research that we've been doing in VR primarily is related to the ability to use VR training to supplement the in-person training that we do. So we go around the country to, say, an agency, it might be a police department, it might be a fire department, we do some training. We know that the people get much better during that training, and then afterward, we leave, and it's up to them to try to maintain the training. Some places are very good about doing that, some are not as good. So we started looking at the ability to use VR to leave behind realistic kind of VR setup so that they could practice the skills that we taught during the training using the VR equipment after we're gone. So we're in the early stages implementing that. We've done our first kind of run where we had actors come in and play the role of victims during an active shooter event. And then we have people responding, and what we compared to start with was just looking at the physiological response of people in a live action type scenario versus in a virtual reality type scenario to see, do we see a similar response physiologically? And that's important because a lot of what we're trying to do with training is habituate people to the situation, to the circumstance. So you want to elevate their stress a little bit. You want them to respond so that they're better prepared if they encounter a real event. And we found so far that VR does produce a spike that's similar to what you see in live action scenarios as far as several different stress markers. You're muted, Dr. Nguyen.
So let's wait for Dr. Billingsley for her camera to get on. So Dr. Spencer, can you go next?
Yes, my name is Dr. B.J. Spencer, and I'm working the Construction Science and Management program in the Engineering Technology here at Texas State. I'm an assistant professor of practice with a focus in architecture. So I handle the architectural drawings and the technology that is being used in the industry. So I work with competitive market areas. Construction's a competitive market. And what we do here is we produce highly skilled managers to critically think and problem solve. And the fun thing is we get to put the technology in their hands and see how they will promote the innovation and creativity on the job site. within the last 5 to 10 years, in this virtual design and construction, VDC, is a new career path in construction, and it's using AR, VR, mixed reality, drones, laser scanners, all of these things to help improve the time, labor, waste, material waste, safety, et cetera, in the construction industry. And so we see the use of MR used on job sites. So you can have on a HoloLens and be on a job site and see the site yourself as well as the holograms. We build the 3D models for walking through and virtually building and resolving issues beforehand. And so we're able then to bring those into the classroom and let students experience those and push the envelope. And so it's exciting to do that in the academic world.
Thank you. Dr. Billingsley, I guess everybody can see you except me, so I apologize for that. Can you please introduce yourself and your research in XR?
Hi, I'm Glenna Billingsley, and I work in the Curriculum Instruction Department, and specifically in special education. My area of research is classroom management, teaching teachers how to manage classrooms, and also behavioral interventions for students with emotional and behavioral disorders. To reach this special population of students, teachers need to practice a complex set of skills that are required to teach those students with very challenging behaviors, managing aggression, defiance, noncompliance. These behaviors, to work with these, for a teacher to work with students with these behaviors, they need to practice these skills, but so that they can deliver them very fluidly in a real classroom, and in a way that promotes positive behavioral changes. So that the VR brings about a controlled environment to do that. It allows practice in a variety of scenarios that they may not see on a consistent basis, fortunately, in a classroom. So they can practice across a variety of scenarios, and they can also repeat practice. And I worked in a research study Dr. Thomas could talk about later, where we compared it to training in just like a Zoom situation. But like Dr. Blair was saying, the more you can bring it to something that's a little closer to the reality, but still maintaining that controlled environment. Because in a real classroom, there are no do-overs. And so inconsistently or incorrectly addressing a behavioral situation could increase the problem, escalate the problem, which would result in students not making improvements or not progressing academically.
Good. Dr. Billingsley and I work together, so I'll introduce myself now. Oh, and I do have my mic on. Good. So I'm Cathy Thomas. I'm also from the Department of Curriculum Instruction at Texas State University. I also have a specialization in special education. And my area of interests and expertise really are in technology and teacher education, and also technology in PK to 20 education to provide access to the curriculum for students. And Dr. Billingsley and I have both had longstanding interests in XR, AR, VR. She actually conducted a literature review to look at how it's being implemented in teacher education. And there's not a lot of literature out there. And part of the reason is we're in education and the costs are often prohibitive for us to really infuse it deeply into teacher education. So we have been exploring an existing platform. I'd conducted a previous study when I was at the University of Missouri, and Dr. Billingsley and Dr. Cathy Randolph from the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs, and I just gathered data using some of Dr. Billingsley's internal funding. And we use a platform called Teach Live that's also a companion platform to Immersion, and it was developed by the University of Central Florida. And they have had longstanding funding by Lockheed Martin and Gates Foundation to provide support. And it's really a mixed simulation or a mixed reality platform where interactors actually simulate children in the classroom to provide teachers with opportunities like Dr. Billingsley to practice critical skills. And she said something that I think is really important, which is when we're preparing young teachers, and I would assume this also applies to Dr. Blair's work and Dr. Spencer's work, it's critical events, like high intensity events, may occur with very low frequency. And so there isn't an opportunity for any kind of scaffolded or supported practice. Mm-hmm. So these, virtual platforms really provide us with the opportunity to have the expert there, provide the feedback and expertise, and for participants to repractice until they have some mastery and fluency, so that when there is one of these critical events that occurs, that the readiness level is much higher and the outcomes have an opportunity to be better. I'm interested in Dr. Billingsley and Dr. Randolph's work, especially because they work in behavior management, and they work with children with emotional and behavioral disorders. And these children are very often the most vulnerable children in our systems. And so when we send young teachers out, or we have more advanced teachers that just don't have behavior management skills that are positive and proactive, what happens is that the teacher practice is imperfect, and it's actually harmful to kids. And so another reason I'm super interested in this, these opportunities to use virtual reality, VR, XR, AR simulation is because it improves teacher skills, but it also protects children and improves child outcomes. And those are critical objectives for us in special education.
Thank you for that. So let me introduce myself last. I am Dr. Khoi Nguyen, and I head the immersion studio here at Texas State University. My interest has always been in the memorialization of people using AR, VR technologies and machine learning and the metaverse. My work deals with first a National AIDS Memorial, where I develop algorithms to read the weathered carvings of the names of those who died of AIDS and HIV complications during the 80s, and give them some kind of an after voice. So when it shines on it, a layer of multimedia goes on top using AR technology to give context of the lives that were lost. These people, many of them were discarded not only by their government, by their family, by their friends. And it is my will to have their memorial or their story preserved for perpetuity. So here at Texas State, I'm also applying this technology to the national cemeteries, Veteran Affairs here. I developed that in LA on my days off, driving to LA traffic to the cemeteries there, practicing. It's particularly hard because a lot of these stones have really crazy grain pattern, right? And so it's very hard for machine learning to learn that. But I use my Ph.D. in computational mathematics to develop that. But it also answers my humanistic side. Who am I as a boat refugee during the Vietnam War, came over here, enjoy all the comforts and the opportunities of this great nation. And so I tell myself, how do I pay back? How do I use what I learned to pay back and to honor those who have laid the foundations for my rights? And so I think the best way to do this is using augmented reality to augment the headstones, because they're amazing in its aggregation, but they're also limited in what you know. And so it'd be so honorable to have these the stories of these men and women for their family really to live in perpetuity and hopefully maintained by the national cemeteries across the United States. So that's where I use the technology in. I see a huge future coming for it. How we memorialize people, it can change and revolutionize an entire industry. And we'll talk about this later in the panel, where all technologies are going to go. So the first kind of questions I want to tackle is, it's really, we're on academic and we take our jobs with metrics and measures. How is this successful? What are the challenges? And there are a lot, otherwise people have done it. So I would like to go through the panel and ask people, how do you measure success? What metrics do you use? What kind of problems do you have and you find? And then we'll go from there to a next discussion. So anyone can go first. We can go the same order, or whoever feels passionate about the metrics and how they measure success.
I can holler. It's in teacher education, they're simple. So, you know, if you give them X number of trials, how many of those did they perform correctly on a given skill? And when you release it, you know, like into classroom environments, do in and out of class, like punishments and exclusions for kids go down? Are teachers more satisfied? Are they more easy to retain in the field? So, you know, there's a lot of ways to measure teacher and student outcomes in education using the virtual reality processes we're talking about.
Awesome.
I'd
Dr.
like
Spencer, would you like to say something?
I'd like to follow up with what Dr. Thomas was saying, and that student behavior is the #1 reason that teachers are leaving the field.
Yeah.
And there was a study came out very recently, this week or last week, that said that of teachers that first started teaching in 2020, 50% of them did not return to this school year. So that's just a phenomenal statistic. And so teachers need to feel confident and competent in their ability to manage student behavior. So I think one of the metrics that we also can look at on a broader scale is, are we reducing the attrition of teachers? Are we reducing the number of student behaviors that escalate to the point where students are being removed from the classrooms? So that's another way we can measure whether what we're doing is having an impact. And I think I know it has the potential to, and I think we're just starting to see some of those statistics come out.
And for myself in the construction students, giving them the tools that they need to enhance their resumes and pursue the new career of the VDC, the virtual design and construction, to be able to really enhance the move of the construction industry into lean management principles of risk taking, of safety, for people to be able to practice. We enhance and we do training tutorials on OSHA requirements for construction safety training, helping with pre-calculus tutorials, on anything that we can to get it in front of students, to get them to practice in a safer environment, some of the skills that they need to also then push the envelope with that comfort level that they also acquire. Then what else can this XR or this VR headset do in an industry with all these moving bits and pieces and everything? We find it's a challenge. The students love it. They really find it more applicable. They learned how to draw and understand the architectural drawings and what is involved in a set of construction documents. And now they're actually able to build it in 3D and actually walk through it with a headset and help clients to understand decision-making processes and everything. So it's really helped to open up a dialogue and improve the communications in our industry.
Yeah, and for us, for our outcome measures, the first ones were stress related. So we took both blood and saliva and compared different measures to see if we can detect changes in the stress levels. And then the next step is we start to roll that equipment out for training is to look at the actual skills that the people have, and are they maintained at least the level that they left our training at, and hopefully even improve over time.
So I'm really a facilitator of stories in my work, all the stories that I'm collecting, and a huge part of it is how do you curate work? How do you validate it that it's actually legitimate? And so that's been extremely hard in this internet world, and that's probably one of the largest charges I have. So when I had a meeting with Dr. Martin Luther King's family and Dr. Abernathy's family, that was the main concern. How do we get these stories correct? Because even when I go to the museums with them, they would point me out, that's wrong, this is wrong, that's wrong, that's a museum. So a lot of times, how do you show authorship? How do you prove all these things is very challenging. And those metrics of getting to the people, especially people who are in the public eye. I do a lot with LGBT civil rights leaders. I met a lot of them face to face, and they want their story told correctly, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, and they want to be filtered that way. And so it's very important for me to ascertain all of these experts in the field and talk with them and to see the validity of the stories. The same things with the veterans. I mean, I have to communicate with the Veteran Affairs. It's a massive, massive program. So 80 or 90% of the funding is curating the work. So it's not even developing the technology, it's curating the content. If you have thousands or tens of thousands of stories, you have to have a workforce to be able to do that. And also to preserve the integrity of the people. You definitely do not want to marginalize them twice, in terms of access and accuracy and all this stuff. So it has been very challenging, but it has to be done because if more time passes, we don't get the story correct, it's pretty much going to be a problem. So a lot of times we think about a priori, let's say veterans were still alive, let them record their stories first, straight from them, let them be the owners of their story. And then when they are interned, then we can use it. And so that's our campaign right now is get it from the source first. But if we can't, if we have to go search, let's say for Dr. King or whoever, we have to go to the family and make sure that it's correct. And so that's what has been, I've been traveling, gosh, I don't know how many times across the country, getting all these stories and getting straight from the source to make sure that I respect the story. So that has been very challenging in my field, but it has been also been very rewarding because I get to meet all these people. So it's been very, very nice. So the next question that I want to get into, which is, how do you see this technology in the future? Where do you see things merging? Where are, in a best case scenario, where do you want to see this XR technology develop? So whoever can go first, please.
So I can holler again. I seem to not mind going first. So in education, the use of virtual technology is not widespread. I think it's a cost issue, but it has such potential power for effective and safe training. So I'd love to see it infused definitely at Texas State, where we have a virtual reality lab that doesn't yet have any education stuff built out. And so that's Dr. Billingsley has been very proactive in trying to make those connections and get this started. And at the moment, with her, we have 3 funding streams to do that. But then we're going to face the challenge that Dr. Blair talked about, which is, they're going all these places to disseminate. We're not even at that level yet, but I would love to see this usable by school districts for in-service training and also by other universities for the technology we have at Texas State. And then, the challenge is how is it fundable and sustainable in teacher education preparation and also in, PK to 12 education, so that it has the maximum impact. And, just as an aside, I would love to see the education research expand to what Dr. Blair's doing and be looking at stress levels of teachers and how that interacts. We can provide them with content instruction on the knowledge and skills they need and the responses they should be giving. But I'd love to see the emotional component of that and how we could help management with that for them to be even more effective.
So I'd like to, so the XR, I think there's a lot of research going on with the wearables that can be used with the AR, VR experiences, especially for like safety training, et cetera. The vests that can be put on or the boots or whatever, so that the physical actions that someone's taking during the training can be monitored, and to say, yes, or you're going to have back problems or whatever. Those are things that are being really pushed right now. Also I've done some work in the educational, the K through 12 digital badges. And as far as talking in equity and accessibility in the design process, I think that's something I would like to see. I mean, as the technology advances, those kind of questions can come up and say, how equitable is this? Because we had to look at it for the K through 12 NASA badging. How can students get access to this? They may not have headsets. They may not have maybe even a computer, and that's pushing it for some cases. And so we had to look and see what is our design requirements around that. And as the innovation, like I said, as it increases, we're going to be able to have more of those dialogues. How do you help with the training? I love what Cathy's been talking about as far as, but also parents could need that kind of exposure and say, how do I deal with my child? It's, I think it's across the platform. I think the storytelling is so important also in this. But as our innovation continues, those questions come up. And I think that's what, fortunately for us, having this dialogue amongst all of us here at Texas State, that we have this platform and we're able to talk to each other and see where each other's research is headed. But for me, and in my industry, it's what the XR wearables, where is that headed?
So I guess I can chime in here. In law enforcement in particular, the ability to train in those high criticality, low probability situations is huge for VR, and the ability to control the situations, change whatever variables that you want to change, and have them go through and make hundreds or thousands of decisions in these high stress type situations is really critical. And I think that's somewhere you're going to see the VR realm merging into, is a lot of work on that decision making under stress. In the AR world, the ability to add AR to your actual practice when officers are on the street can be huge, as far as weapons detection, other things that might show up that are there. That's big, and there are groups that are working on that right now.
I would just like to add in there that we've all kind of talked about the issue of safety. I really want to see our pre-service and like Dr. Thomas said, in-service teachers as well spend more time in the lab. And the only way that that's going to happen is if these technologies become more readily available, or at in a way that's not cost prohibitive.
Yes, for me, the technology I'm very excited about is going to the metaverse. How do we represent all of the spaces that I'm collecting the stories? How do we have a repository that's in the metaverse that can exist even longer than the physical memorials that we're doing? And because it's in the metaverse, believe it or not, blockchain technology will be huge in the future. I know everybody thinks, well, Bitcoin's a fad, I think, but blockchain, it's going to be huge in the technology, because it is a way to maintain all of these metaverses, maintain contracts, maintain all of these assets on there. So I think that's a huge field coming in. Obviously, machine learning and hopefully artificial intelligence will come into this in terms of dispersing information. I mean, when you have this giant collection of stories, right, whether it be video or audio, how do you process information? How do you use, natural language processing to get the information that you want from researchers? Because a lot of this are fundamental to researchers in history, military history, and all this stuff. And you have a treasure trove of all this information. How do you process this? So how do you leverage technology for the betterments of society, right? How can you use blockchain to better society? How can you use AI and ML to better society? How can you use metaverse to better society? So that is what I'm interested in, is how do we use this technology that's actually very profound and it's actually, I think, very life-changing, but not to, get the highest Bitcoin and buy a pink Lamborghini, but to really focus on how do we do this technology so further our research, further the knowledge base of the humankind. And that's why we're in research and that's why we're in academia. Now, I wanted to go back to Dr. Spencer's very eloquent talk about how do you address equity. Now, this might not apply to all of us, but I would like us to attack this critical issue of accessibility and equity. How do we do this? So if someone would like to start, please.
I think about that a lot, and Dr. Spencer has spoken of it almost every time I've ever had an opportunity to talk to her. And I appreciate it very much because it makes me reflect. And Dr. Nguyen, you're talking about the purpose of the research and the purpose of our endeavors really is for the betterment of society or for the common good, right? And I think that's a thread across our work. But the equity and accessibility, and Dr. Spencer talks about it coming in at the design stage. And, so like I said, the first technology Dr. Billingsley and I've used is really cost prohibitive for most people. We're hopeful that we can start moving it into the lab at Texas State, which has more of a public platform. And I would love to continue conversations about wearables or portables. For our purposes in special education and to protect children and children's rights that are guaranteed under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the expert feedback loop. So the professor or the instructor, or the professional developer, or whoever, like that still is a critical loop. And I don't know how to automate that or make it more efficient. Although with all of the technology we have, we can certainly get it to any place in the world, no matter how rural or how under-resourced. So anyway, real problems to keep thinking about and solve.
I think that the fact that current school discipline disproportionately affects students with disabilities and minority students. And so if teachers can come into the classroom knowing and being confident in their ability to manage classroom behaviors, I think we'll see fewer students suspended, expelled, or entering the school to prison pipeline. And to me, that's why I think this work is so valuable, because we can prevent some of that stuff in just training our teachers better. I think it's going to make the teachers more confident in staying, but it ultimately is going to help students tomorrow's.
Dr. Blair, would you like to go?
Sure. Well, when you talk about training, if you're talking about training and dealing with the public, anything you do to improve decision making and action in the public is going to have positive impact on equity kind of situations. And so if you have police making better decisions, you have fewer use of force incidents, you have fewer deadly use of force incidents, those are things that can be addressed. So that all plugs in there for us. As far as the actual design of the training stuff that we're using, because we are dealing with first responders, they have certain physical requirements, capabilities that they have to do the job. So there's a little less concern about that on our end than there probably is in the educational side of things.
Yeah, thank you. For me, I think equity is gigantic. I mean, my whole project is all about equity. So we have to think about what's called the pipeline. So for those audience out there, when you develop this thing, you have to think of all the pipelines in XR. Think about accessibility. First might be on the web. Can your application exist on the web? Can it exist next on the mobile phone, which is more accessible? And then eventually, can it fit on the VR? And then probably the most inaccessible is the mixed reality headsets. But again, technology is advancing at the speed of light. And so all these things will get very affordable. But still, there will still be barriers. And so we have to be very cognizant if we want to live in a society that give everybody opportunity to access to this thing. So I implore the people, the audience, to really think about all the pipelines. And if you design your system a priori first for all those pipelines, instead of creating one and then think, oh, how can I port this backwards? It's a lot harder to do. But if you think first, it also makes good economic sense, right? To have all these pathways of access and think of what is the most economically efficient path. And then you do it that way. And then once you do, you have a more holistic approach. But it's not an afterthought. It's something that you really need to design in, because it's actually sometimes pretty hard to go backwards. But whatever we design has always been that in mind. How do we get access to people? Because let's give me an example. I was at the National AIDS Memorial, and people visiting, and I go, they say, I wish my father was on here, because that'd be great, but it costs $1,000 or $2,000 to have the etching. But in the metaverse, we can create a sample of this, and it'll be accessible. It'll be like almost free for them to have this etching on there. So we have to think about how you have people access. It's kind of disheartening to see people barred away for something like this. And so we have to think of technology to help open up the gauntlet so people have access to this. And woman, gender, race, social, economic. So everybody needs a voice. Everybody should be heard. And that is the first fundamental design that we have to include in all of our research here. Okay, so now let's move towards when technology changes so fast, like in our field is going. How do we evaluate metrics? I mean, what do we do? I mean, how do we attack these problems? How do we get on the pulse of technology? I mean, how do you guys do it? How do you guys keep on track of this? And maybe it's just too much to do, but I'd like to hear, like, how do someone out there keep a track on what's going on in the world with so many things happening?
Well, I know for myself in our construction industry, in our program, our advisory boards are right there and giving us assistance in our curriculum, helping us, with our students, giving them internships, et cetera. And so the industry reaches back into us and then helps to really strengthen our programs. They're using this cutting edge technology. Like I said, it's only been in existence 5 to 10 years and being used in construction. And most of the people doing it were self-taught. I mean, fortunately for us, we have things like Lynda and YouTube and all these things that now students can train. And that's what we do, is we put the technology in our students' hands. We show them where to go to get this training, and our advisory boards, our industry assist that.
I think of it in kind of another way. I mean, from an educational standpoint, the practice is driven by the best learning theory we have at the moment, and also whatever our instructional objectives are. And those things change with the research, but they're a foundation. And so, like, I think of the technology as a platform with a lot of affordances, and the affordances just keep improving and expanding. And that's the exciting part to me of the technology, And so I think about, I mean, how technology has changed over time. Like, I remember being tied to the wall because I was talking on the phone, right? And now I have this cell phone and I can scan from it and I can take pictures and I can enlarge things. And, you know, when you think about people with disabilities, like the assistive features that are built in are just, you know, incredible. And so, you know, like basically, I really seriously think about technology in terms of what is it going to allow me to do that wasn't possible before, that was harder before, and that was less efficient or cost effective before. And, you know, what we were talking about with these virtual VR, XR, AR, whatever it is that we get this situated cognition where we can build in conditionalized learning, where they recognize these contextual clues in the virtual environment that cue them that this is when you should use this body of knowledge, or this is when you should pull out this skill. And we can get it to the point where it's almost like automated. So I just, you know, I mean, I wish I had millions of dollars and could just continue to pursue the technologies that are available that would solve the problems that we experience in education, but we do it little by little and step by step. And we just keep trying, but it's powerful.
I think also something that's important is that it has to do, the technology has to bring something, it has to solve a problem. You can have a lot of pretty bells and whistles, and it can be fun, and it can be, you know, but if it's not measurable, that it can measurably improve what we're trying to do, then it's, you know, it's not serving a purpose, you know, in education. You know, it's, I just feel like it has to be there to really solve a problem, to make it worth the doing it different. And these technologies do that. And we're showing that with our research, that it solves a problem that couldn't be solved another way.
Yeah, I think if you try to race and keep up with the technology, you're never going to succeed because it is moving so quickly. So like Dr. Billingsley said, does the new technology offer you something beyond what you had in the previous technology? Otherwise, you risk spending lots and lots of money on something that's really not improving what you're doing already. And in the law enforcement world, those good example, we've been using firearms training simulators for decades. They're basically a screen that have a scenario play out like a movie in front of you, and then there's a gun that you can use to do the shooting stuff. And then they started adding multiple screens to that, so it started to wrap around. And then the technology that was right before VR really took the jump ahead a few years ago and got to where it was usable in like a home style system, was to have an entire building, warehouse sized building, converted into a VR play area, if you want to call it that had big stanchions that were up and sensors that were everywhere, and you could run a team of people in there. And it was a very cool experience at the time, but it was a multi-million-dollar setup just for the VR equipment, much less the building itself that you're putting it in. And then a couple years down the road, that's all obsolete, and the people are trying to get rid of those systems, get people to take them, you know, because it's what can be done now in your little portable home system is better than what's going on there. So that's a trap you really have to be aware of too. And I think Dr. Billingsley's right. Is the question to ask is always, is that new jump in technology something that's actually going to improve what you're doing, or is it just some more flashy bells and whistles and it looks cooler than what you had going on before? And as far as keeping track, we try to scan the news and pay attention to what people are doing, what's happening. We have lots and lots of people in the field that are our trainers and our trainees. They come back to us and ask us about things, and so we kind of keep awareness that way as well.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so we have to enter our Q&A. I have a bunch of questions, but we're not running out of time. So I guess we can open up onto the Q&A section of this presentation. Okay, so first question from Lei. Good morning. How do the majority of your trainees typically initially respond to the XR training experience? Are they excited about technology? Are there any hesitation toward this type of training platform?
I know in the
I guess that
study
would
that
be Dr. Blair or Dr. Thomas. I guess for me, we wouldn't be, but yeah.
in the study that Dr. Thomas and I worked on this last semester, and I know it's just a very tough time. I mean, students are have decided to come to school during, you know, the global pandemic and a lot of things happening, and so there's a lot of other things that may play into this, but it seems very polarizing. Some students are so eager and they want to get in there and they wanted to be in the, oh, I want to be in the VR group. Can I get in the VR group? Well, you know, we're randomizing. And some of them were so anxious about it that they didn't want to participate at all. Most are kind of in the, you know, I don't even see it that it's a, well, the younger ones tend to be more eager. It wasn't along age lines. That's a very interesting question, Lee.
I saw the ones that actually had been selected into the VR group, and they were all nervous. Like every single one, the first thing they said to me was, I am so nervous. But afterwards, like once they were in the VR simulation, like they've had a very positive experience, and also they were extremely reflective about what they did when they were in the VR environment, and that was exciting for me.
For some of my construction students to be able to build a 3D model and then be able to put on a VR headset and walk themselves through the model at full scale was amazing, because they could experience what they'd only seen in little computer screen. So for them, they've enjoyed the challenge. Of course, some people have tendencies towards liking technology, and then of course others goes, no, I'm a superintendent, I don't want to do this. But I haven't had any, as far as in construction, the experience has been beneficial for the majority.
Our students really like it. They don't have any trouble going through any of the training things that we do. And then also as a longer term training thing, when you have the technology developed and you get to practice on your own, you get to make your mistakes in private as opposed to being in a big group where everybody gets to see, oh, you screwed that up, and then the teacher's correcting you in front of the class, and all those sorts of things that are happening. So it adds that level too, which I think a lot of people like as well.
I guess I can chime in a little bit because I actually don't do training for my research, but I have people experience what I've created, and that is where I get my most reward. For example, we're able to get stories of this young lady about her brother who passed away during the war in Afghanistan. And when she actually tried the technology, shined it on the headstone, and it pulled out his stories, it always brings tears to all the people. And they're just so thankful. And that's why we're doing this. That's why we have so much passion in this. Because it touches our humanity, who we are as a person, what we're doing, and what we're trying to do. So any small bits like that. So when I take the opportunity to have people try it out and see what impact it has, and even if it's not your family member, you can see the importance of this work. So that's where we get the actual joy of it, when we test these things out and see the light bulbs pop up and see that, wow, this is pretty amazing, or wow, this is so profound. So yeah, that is our drive, and so that's a great question. Thank you for that. For the next question from Marcia, I want to know more about using emerging technologies, immersive technologies in VR and the metaverse for helping students learning math and provide equity in math education. Where do I start?
Okay, I'll throw some in and we'll see what Dr. Billingsley can add. I actually don't know the math literature in VR, but the place to look would be look up Teach Live at the University of Central Florida and email them. But there's other technology that's really powerful for math and equity. And so if you look up Sarah Powell at the University of Texas at Austin has an amazing series of video modeling for teachers and for parents. And also UNLV has a virtual manipulative library. So there is a lot of technology out there to scaffold and support math.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't hear that. Yeah, so for here, what we do, there are some professors here that collaborate with myself in creating math content. A lot of these teaching tutorials are also free online too. So if you go to some repositories, they do have modules for teaching mathematics in VR, even physics and chemistry too. But creating your own, I would recommend you collaborating with cohorts who have done this before at the university level, because most of our stuff, by the way it usually is free to the public once we create it. I have friends who create stuff for teaching pre-calculus, making it more equitable, more interesting, diverse questions also is important in it. And so I would recommend you searching the free depositories that we have, or talk to your local universities who's been doing this type of research.
Yeah, I agree. Most of the education stuff is public domain, and another resource to look at would be PhET, P-H-E-T, which is online simulation, and a lot of it's science, but it overlaps into math.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is from Lindsay Ashley. How can we learn more about the XR technology programs at Texas State University?
Well, I think it depends on the what level, what department, what program, or whatever that you might be interested in. But we do have at the library on campus, we do have an area where students can come in and use this high technology, and a lot of, hopefully our faculty are all getting interconnected and being able to share stories, and having a venue like this where we can actually talk and compare notes. But there's a whole lot more of us on campus doing things. There's I'm trying to think of Chris Smith's thing where he's doing a lot of work. There it is right there, social work, that they're doing a lot of trainings in, etc. So there's a lot of different places to look up.
Is someone talking, or can I go?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I work on the first floor here. It's called Alcac 1. And we have a $2 million grant. And all of this was created for all access to all the students here. It is not siloed in any discipline. We encourage people to come here to explore. So we don't require you to be in discipline. We have 20-something headsets here, VR headsets here, 4 MR headsets here that go anywhere from $350 to $5,000. Every asset we can almost buy online. We have thousands and thousands of dollars worth of assets. Of course, the students love games, so we have thousands of dollars of those too, to explore, to get inspired, right? We have design studio here where you can design, you can make things here. We have workshops that you guys can come and for free to learn all this technology. I offer a 7-series workshop every week. It's always full, but we're trying to expand it. We're trying to expand that. So the knowledge is hungry. People are hungry to learn this stuff. So I just got invited from Unity Technologies, which is one of the premier 3D development firm to apply for grants. So when we get invited, that's a good thing. So it's due soon. We're doing that to have more educators that can teach this technology, exciting technology. But our slant is towards social justice, because that's what we want to do. We want to teach how to use VR XR also to social justice, and also learning how to be proficient with this. So yeah, so Texas State is really invested in this. I mean, we also are building a virtual production for those for those people in film here. So yeah, we are getting something like The Mandalorian, but a smaller scale. You know, screens in the back where you guys can really go full force into this XR technology. It's a very amazing field. Okay, should I go to the next question or? Okay. From Carla, do you know of any government agencies that are providing funding for equity in XR?
So all of the federal agencies that I'm aware of do have a strong equity component as a requirement for all of their proposals. So, you know, I have funding, not technology specific, from the Office of Special Education Programs, but NSF, the National Science Foundation. You always have to do broader impacts as part of your proposal and statement. And I think others can speak to that as well. But I think the national agenda is very much social justice and equity focused in their funding streams.
Yeah, the digital humanities, you know, the NEH has huge grants for this now. They're always, like Dr. Thomas said, they're always into equity. So I recommend you looking at those. The NEA also, you know, but also a lot of maybe not governmental, but institutions, a lot of museums, they do that too nowadays, where they really promote XR. The LACMA does. So yeah, there's other venues too besides federal grants. There's a lot of private places that does it too. But definitely look into the NEH and the digital humanities. That they have a huge. I mean, there's some coming up due in March and April. So please do look at it. We need more of this in the humanities. So yeah, I encourage everybody to look at the NEH. Okay, so one last question. Is there any meetups or seminars near San Marcos or Austin where we can come together to discuss XR and share recent developments?
So I know that here on campus, we have a student group, ARVR, where they get together possibly weekly and have competitions. And so we'd have to, you know, tap into that. I'm sure they're connected probably to the Outkick library at this point also to be able to utilize all those sources. So there's a student group is what I'm aware of. I know in the construction industry, there's starting to be more virtual design VDC type groups that do meet in Austin and San Antonio to share the information. We're looking into possibly doing some kind of a workshop in the future. Now, right now, we're in the process of doing that. And so there are things out there.
Okay, thank you so very much. Virtual round of applause for our 5 special guest panelists. We very much appreciate your time. This has been a very thought-provoking conversation, and we appreciate you sharing your work with our audience. And we've got a lot of curiosity that's been going on in the chat, and I'm sure that a lot of folks are going to look to get some more resources from some of the programs that you talked about at Texas State or some of the grants that you discussed. So we'll be sure to try to get to as many of those questions as we can on the back end from our site here. But thank you so much for your time. If you would like to keep the conversation going for our attendees, we do have a virtual networking lounge, and we have created an AR, VR, XR chat room. So if you'd like to continue the discussion, please join us there. Our next panel will be starting at 11:30, and the title for that one is Managing Cybersecurity Awareness in Texas. So we've got some guests from the Texas Department of Information Resources and AT&T. So please go grab a snack, go get some water, and we'll see you back here in 30 minutes. Thank you.